Did Donald Trump gamble with the lives of U.S. cadets when he launched the Iran war, leaving trainee mariners trapped in the Persian Gulf as the first bombs fell? Why were trainee officers left in the line of fire while the U.S. bombed Iran, with their ships stranded inside a live conflict zone? Was this a grave Pentagon lapse, as American cadets became sitting ducks in a war zone with no clear protection or contingency plan? No warning, no exit route. How did U.S. cadets end up stranded in the Persian Gulf for nearly a month while the war escalated around them? When the U.S. attacked Iran on February 28, around half a dozen American merchant marine cadets were sailing in the Persian Gulf on U.S.-flagged ships, according to Notice. This deployment involved 5 privately owned commercial vessels flying U.S. flags, which were working closely with the U.S. military under sealift and support arrangements. Notice reports that the cadets serving on these vessels did not know that their home country had just started a war with Iran as the strikes began. The Pentagon gave no advance notice of the attack to those vessels or to maritime authorities, Notice reported on April 9, breaking with expectations of prior coordination. Officials in the U.S. Department of Transportation and at the Merchant Marine Academy were also left completely uninformed about the impending strikes, the report says. Because of this, unaware cadets and civilian crews suddenly found themselves exposed in a rapidly escalating conflict zone in the Gulf. This, as the Strait of Hormuz quickly turned into a flashpoint as tensions surged almost immediately after the U.S. attack on Iran. Within hours of the war starting, the U.S.-flagged ships effectively became potential Iranian targets simply because of their flag and their presence in the area. In the early days of the conflict, the U.S.-flagged oil tanker Stena Imperative was struck by an Iranian projectile. The projectile tore a hole in the hull of the oil tanker and killed a dock worker, Notice reported. Another U.S.-flagged vessel in the region was nearly hit by a projectile, according to 2 sources who spoke to Notice about the incident. A third U.S.-flagged ship loaded with cargo reportedly lost money every day because it could not safely leave the Strait of Hormuz during the hostilities. According to Notice, no specific evacuation plan existed for the cadets or for American civilian crews in the region when the war began. As fighting continued to escalate, the cadets stayed on board their vessels for weeks, sheltering in ports and anchorages instead of being immediately removed from the area. Evacuation of the cadets only occurred nearly a month later, and it was carried out under uncertain and changing security conditions, the report notes. U.S. lawmakers later criticized the administration for failing to anticipate these consequences and for not better protecting American cadets and civilian mariners before launching the strikes. According to a new report, Iran will allow no more than 15 vessels a day to pass through the Strait of Hormuz under the ceasefire agreement it agreed with the United States. An unnamed senior Iranian source was quoted by Russia's state TASS news agency regarding the update on Strait of Hormuz. The Revolutionary Guards also directed ships to follow revised traffic patterns to ensure safe passage through the waterway. The advisory lays out specific entry and exit corridors designed to reduce risks for commercial vessels. The IRGC Navy also urged ships to coordinate closely with Iranian forces while transiting the strait. Vessels entering from the Sea of Oman were asked to move north of Larak Island before entry. Ships exiting the Gulf were advised to pass south of the island, following the newly designated safer routes. The new development comes after Israel hit Lebanon with some 100 missiles in just 10 minutes. Less than 24 hours after the U.S. announced a ceasefire with Iran, Iranian state media reported that the Strait of Hormuz had been shut down again, reversing a key condition of the truce. The complete and safe reopening of the strait was President Trump's stated condition for the 2-week ceasefire, tying the pause in U.S. strikes directly to the free passage of oil shipments. The stunning move came less than 24 hours after the U.S. and Israel publicly backed the truce talks with Iran on March 7 to 8, raising immediate questions about the deal's stability. The closure happened despite earlier indications that Iran would reopen the vital shipping route as part of the broader agreement, at least for the duration of the 2-week pause. On the night of March 8 to 9, Iran's press TV reported that an oil tanker was turned away near the strait, underscoring the tightening of maritime controls in the region. The tanker, named Aurora, made an abrupt 180-degree turn at sea and instead returned toward the Persian Gulf rather than continuing through the strait. The U.S. government has stated that the Aurora is a sanctioned vessel, alleging it is used to transport Iranian oil outside the usual commercial channels. Under the ceasefire agreement with Washington, Iran had reportedly agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz for maritime traffic. However, subsequent reports suggested that access to the strait would be regulated and implemented in a limited manner. An Iranian official told Reuters that full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz could instead take place on April 9th. On April 8th, U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth stated during a Pentagon briefing that the strait was effectively open. Hegseth said that the agreement ensured that maritime transit through the Strait of Hormuz would resume under the terms discussed. However, the U.S. defense chief appeared visibly annoyed when questioned about Iran's continued military activities despite the ceasefire.
Iran has said that safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible in coordination with Iran's armed forces and, quote, technical limitations. What do you believe that means? And then we've also heard reports that Iran has continued striking targets well into this morning. At what point are we beyond a grace period? Are we giving them a grace period? Is there a miscommunication there? What's going on with that?
What we know is that Iran is going to say a lot of things. A lot of people are going to say a lot of things, claim a lot of things. What has been agreed to, what's been stated, is the strait is open. Our military is watching. I'm sure their military is watching, but commerce will flow. And that's what you saw the markets react to, is that reality. As far as shooting, that we were monitoring it last night in real time. Of course we are. Iran would be wise to find a way to get the carrier pigeon to their troops out in remote locations to know not to shoot any longer one-way attacks or missiles, because it takes time sometimes for ceasefires to take hold. We're watching it. We're prepared if necessary, but we hope and believe that it'll hold. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Why are you so rude? Just wait. I'm calling on people.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Yesterday in the President's Truth Social, he threatened to wipe out a civilization. That statement elicited a huge response in America. If Iran did not come to the table and make a deal yesterday by the deadline, was the president really prepared to wipe out Iran entirely?
Like I said, we had a target set, locked and loaded, of infrastructure, bridges, power plants. Remember, this is a terror regime. The military regime used all of these things for dual use to fund their military, to fund their terror campaigns. We had a lot of legitimate targets. They knew exactly the scope of what we were capable of.